Hey everyone, it's Lisa. Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I thought I'd bring you a weekend reading vlog. I haven't done reading vlogs before, this is my first. So the first on my stack is I picked up a copy of Napoleon the Great by Andrew Roberts, and this has been on my radar for a long time. I actually ordered a copy of this from the Book Depository in the UK before they closed shop, and when it got delivered to me, Canada Post handed me an empty package with the book sleeve that the company had wrapped it in, saying, sorry, we lost your book. So I got delivered a empty package, and the book did make it into Canada and it cleared customs, and then Canada Post lost it at some point. So I was thrilled to see this just suddenly in stock in Amazon. So I snatched up a copy because it does go in and out of stock, and I wanted the UK edition. You know, as much as I'm interested in Napoleon as a historical figure, I'm also just interested in learning about him as a man. Like, this is gonna get into, you know, his battles and the strategies and everything like that, but I'm kind of interested to know who he was as a man. And this biography also paints him in more of a favorable light, a little bit more than a tyrant. So I'm interested in learning about him for that. I don't know much about this period of time in history. I'm in chapter 3, it's, you know, we had a chapter on the French Revolution, and I only had to learn about aspects of the French Revolution in high school, like as it affected Canada, like the 7 Years' War, when, you know, France sold Quebec, which was Canada, you know, to Britain. But I don't know much about the French Revolution, and so a big, you know, chunk of this book takes place during that time period. So, but the other thing, so one thing I do, like I'll show, like, when I tackle these, you know, thicker non-fiction books, I think I showed this in another video, what I do is I tab the chapters. So I've got it sectioned off by the different parts, and then each one of these flags, so this is part 1 is all the red flags, and then part 2 of the book is the purple flags, and then part 3 of the book is the kind of the greeny yellow flags in the back. And so that kind of just gives me milestones to reach through. And the chapters are not very long. And then on the top, I flagged, when I was doing this, whenever I came across a map, I flagged that. So it just kind of gives me some milestones and kind of help keep track of the book. And another thing I do, well, when I read books like this, is when I get to the end of the chapter, I do some notes. So I'll sit down and kind of I do annotate as I go through, so I'll underline things and write notes in the margins, and if I find a word that I don't understand, I'll circle it and look it up. So I do kind of keep my computer or my iPad close by when I read books like this. And I am also actually reading this in tangent with the audiobook. So I'm listening to the audiobook narrator as I'm reading the text, and I'm finding that really useful, especially because there's a lot of French names and places. Now, I've been Canadian, studied French in high school, so it's not completely foreign to me. I'm familiar with the language. I don't speak French, but yeah, I can read some of it okay and stuff like that. But the pronunciations, so it's really nice to listen to somebody pronounce all the names and places correctly. And another thing I'm doing to kind of keep this a little bit more interesting for me is because there's a lot of dudes in this book. Okay, there's a lot of dudes. You know, all of his generals and all the men in power at this time, and just all the people that were around Napoleon. Obviously, it was a lot of guys. So one thing I'm doing to kind of keep it a little bit more, you know, interesting to me, or, you know, keep my perspective on, because I want to learn about Napoleon as a man. On top of, you know, all of his military stuff, like I was saying. So one thing I'm doing is, whenever I come across a female character, I'm doing like a little character study. So I just take a piece of scrapbook paper and cut it to the size of my book, and then I just put glue on the edge and just stick it in there, and then it becomes like a page in the book, and I put notes on it. And I go down the rabbit hole, like I do spend a little time. So the first one I've done here is on Desiree Clary. So she was Napoleon's first fiance, his fiance before he married Josephine. So she was an interesting character and to her own. And I wouldn't have learned as much about her if I hadn't have done this, like, 'cause she's just mentioned in a few chapters, and so and I don't go into like philosophical or scholastic kind of pages to learn. I just go to Wikipedia. And does it have to be totally referenced and accurate? No, I'm not, I'm not writing a research paper. I'm not doing this for a course. There's no test at the end of this book. I'm just, want to learn about the women involved with Napoleon's life, who they were as characters, how they played a role in his life, and the influence they may or may not had on his life. So she was an interesting character. Like, they were only engaged for a short period. Wikipedia kind of leads you to believe that he kind of abandoned her for Josephine. But when I read this book, which is actually researched and cited and probably more accurate, it actually talked about how it was actually her family that kind of encouraged her to move on from him, because her older sister married Napoleon's older brother, and maybe they thought maybe having one Bonaparte in the family was enough. I don't know, but she kind of ghosted him. So in his letters, because a lot of his writings and letters are preserved, in his letters that still exist, he was corresponding to her, and you could see how much he cared for her and how much he loved her. And then as he never heard back from her because she wasn't responding, he eventually, he sounded pretty brokenhearted, and then he kind of just, near the end of the relationship, started calling her mademoiselle again, and instead of calling her tu, he was calling her vous, and in French, tu is very personal and vous is more formal. So it was kind of interesting to see that. And I mean, she went on to be the Queen of Sweden, and she lived this aristocratic lifestyle. So anyway, she was an interesting, and you can go on the internet and see pictures of her, and she actually lived until 1860, and so there's actually a actual photograph of her, because she lived long enough into that period of time. But anyway, so that's kind of what I'm doing with this book. So whenever I see an interesting woman named in the book, I am gonna spend some time, and I think there's gonna be a few, because there are photographs in this book, and there's a lot of women pictured, if I could find one here. So there's quite a number of women pictured in this book, and how they were part of his life or not. So another character I should go back and do it as study as his mother. I didn't think about doing that until I was I'll be a little bit further into the book. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading Napoleon the Great. Like I said, I'm not going to get this read this weekend. This book is almost 900 pages. It is dense, and I have to stop and look up words that I don't understand, especially things that are in the French that the narrator doesn't translate for us, or I don't understand the concept, or if it's around some place in Europe that I've never heard of. So I kind of stop, and I am taking my time with it. So this will be kind of an ongoing project, but so far I'm really enjoying it. And I haven't seen the new movie out with Joaquin Phoenix in it, so it'll be interesting to see how he's portrayed in that movie after reading something like this. So yeah, so Napoleon the Great. Hey y'all, I got a quick update. Here, come here. So I'm just in the part of the book where he meets Josephine. So Josephine was his wife. And I think they were married for some time. I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. So I finished my character study on Josephine, and you would have seen how I cut it to fit the size of this book. And so what I'm going to do is now just glue it in there where Josephine was introduced as a character. And I just went onto Wikipedia and took a couple pages of just some highlights about her and things I might want to remember. So, and in doing this, I also found a couple of other names that I want to do character studies on, so I'll do some more of those. So that's where I'm at. So how I actually put my character studies in my book is I just take some white glue. This is original tacky glue. It can be any kind of white glue, it doesn't matter. Even a glue stick would probably work. And what I do is give it a shake, glue it. And I just
don't get angry at me. I'm trying to help.
Stick it in here, and that's it. And then it will become like a page in the book. And I try to like write. I leave myself a little bit of a margin on the glued edge so that where I'm writing doesn't go right into the spine of the book. So yeah, so now it's like a whole new page in my book, and it's there in my book, so it's all together. I love doing this. I love doing this. Learned a few little things about her, and I didn't write down everything. Like I kind of just kept it related to, you know, pretty high notes. She was previously married and her husband was guillotined. She actually was imprisoned herself, but she escaped the guillotine because the Reign of Terror ended at only days, you know, before she was going to be sent there. So she got lucky. And she died young. She was only 50 when she died. I didn't know that either. But yeah, anyway, so I did a little character study on Josephine, and I enjoyed doing that. And like I said, I did a character study on Desiree. So that was Napoleon's first fiance. He never did marry her. And I found a few other names that I want to do character studies on, but I won't do those character studies until I come across them in this book. Like if they are brought up in this book, then that's when I'll kind of go down those rabbit trails. It's really good. I'm enjoying it. So Napoleon the Great. So it's later in the evening, and I'm going to soon be finishing chapter 4, which has been a long chapter on his military battles and victories in northern Italy. But occasionally the author, Andrew Roberts, sprinkles in a few little tidbits about his personal life with Josephine. It's kind of what I've been looking for. It's like, who was the man behind the persona that we all know as Napoleon? Like, who was he? Like, he may have been a military tyrant, but he fell at his knees to women. So I'll leave you with that. So I just finished chapter 4. I'm now on page 105. So I'm doing good. I'm making a small dent. Chapter 4 was interesting. We learned it was a longer chapter, and there was a lot of you know, battle discussion in it, and it was about his campaign in northern Italy. He was sent there by the French army to be the commander of the the army of Italy. So, and he had great success, and northern Italy at the time, this is like the late 1700s, like late 1790s, was under under Austrian occupation for like centuries. And so while the Italians, I don't want to say they were receptive, but it was better than the Austrian rule that they'd been under, notwithstanding they know that the French were their new occupiers. But yeah, so it was really interesting in that regard. It talked a lot about the Battle of Lodi, which is really the first watershed moment in Napoleon's career. And I looked it up on the internet and looked at the bridge on Google Maps and everything. It's all still there, and it was all quite interesting. But all the time that this was going on, he's writing letters to Josephine, like daily. And it says in here, like, post back then would take 2 weeks to get to Paris. And he was writing to her all the time, regularly, daily, and she rarely responded. And when she did, it was very like impersonal and called him vous instead of tu, and that irritated him. And he he wrote, I mean, as a woman reading these, like, to get a letter from a man like this, that he really loved her, she didn't love him back so as much. So he wrote like letters to her saying, "You came and inspired a limitless passion and intoxication which degrades." Like, he wrote like these amazing words to her, you know, that you know, she had no intention going to see him. And in fact, during this time she had taken a lover, and toward the end of the chapter, sorry if this is spoilery, like, skip away. Again, I'm reading this from the perspective of Napoleon the man and who he was and the women in his life, not so much for the military battles and military tactics. I mean, that's kind of interesting too, but it's not my main interest in reading this. But near the end of the chapter, he had suspected that she had taken a lover, and he was so unhappy. He wrote to her, "I hate Paris, women, and the lovemaking. The state of affairs is frightful." Like, he genuinely was disheartened and upset that he was being rejected by his wife, and he genuinely did care for her. But it is also on the same hand revealing that while he bared his romantic soul to her in hundreds and hundreds of letters, he never once said anything about his military campaigns, what was going on with the battle. He never said any of those things. And it could be looked at as he didn't trust her with that information, or he thought that also very likely that his letters were being read and you know, could be intercepted. Like I said, like they said the post would take over 2 weeks to get back to Paris every time he wrote, and because he's in northern Italy at this time. So anyway, so it's fascinating. I'm really enjoying learning about him. I might have a little bit of a crush on him at this point. Like, just reading some of his letters to her is so good. It's so good. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this kind of develops. So I'm just gonna keep reading because I'm having a good time. I'm sitting here in front of my computer screens. I've got Italy up on the map. I'm listening to the Audible version because it matches the UK version of the book I have here, and it's a great experience. So I'm having a good time. So I'll check in with you later. So quick update on the book. I am about halfway through chapter 5, and it's a lot of very detailed accounts of his military campaigns and aka battles in northern Italy. A bit more of, I would call, the drier chapter that I've come across so far. I mean, it's still really interesting. It's still really interesting, and he is a very interesting character, and the military strategies, and I knew there'd be a lot of that in this book, so it's all fine. yeah, I'm just really enjoying learning about Napoleon as a man and how he really uses, how can I put this? Like, he really uses his personality to influence and his connections, his ability to connect with people to his advantage. So, I mean, I guess you could call it somewhat calculating, but I mean, he was very successful. So anyway, I'm really enjoying it. Josephine has arrived in Italy. She's not happy, but you know, I'm sure more of that to come. So I am more than halfway at this. Well, I'm about halfway through part 1 of the book. The book's divided into 3 main parts. So I'm about halfway through book 1, and yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really looking forward to kind of getting into more like once he's crowned emperor, and you know, where it goes from there. Hey guys, so I think this will be the last update for tonight. It's almost 10 o'clock at night and I'm starting to get a little tired, and chapter 5 is a bit draggy. It's good. It's just, like I'm saying, a lot of details about you know, all the little Italian villages that he's battling at, and all the foreign names on both sides, honestly, the French and the Austrians that he's battling. I had to even go back and refresh myself about why they were even in Italy, which I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, but I mean, this is the process, right? Like, I don't know much about the French Revolutionary War, or the French Revolution, or the wars, and the different coalitions that came out of that. So I had to learn about all of that, why the French were in Italy, and really, from what I understand, they wanted Austria out of Italy because France was at war with Austria over revolutionary principles of liberal thought and democracy after they overthrew the monarchy. So basically France was at war with a bunch of other countries in Europe at the time that had monarchies, like Britain and Prussia and other nations like that. So I think it was just, at this point, France spreading into these other countries for those reasons. I'm not a historian. I'm just learning. I don't know anything about this, but to the best of my understanding, that's kind of what's going on. So I think I'm gonna call it a night. My audiobook is telling me that I'm about halfway through chapter 5 now. I've read 50 minutes of audiobook, reading along to get halfway through. It took me 50 minutes of listening to audio, but it took me actually much longer than that because I had to stop and look up on the internet. Like, I got Italy back up on the maps here, and I had to understand, like, I started to just get lost in all the particulars of what's going on. So in reality, I've probably spent more like 2 hours reading half of chapter 5. So this is a dense read, but it's really worth it. I feel like this is going to be really worth it to get through it. And it's not so dense that I'm frustrated about understanding what's, you know, the language or what's happening. And Napoleon is very much an interesting character. So that's why I'm here. So in all, I think it's really good. I knew, like I keep saying this, but I knew all of the military battle stuff would be a little bit draggy for me. But we're kind of in the thick of his rise to power in the military. So I know that's, you know, it's understandably why the author is going into great details about, you know, specific battles on specific days, even down to the time of day. Like, oh, by 3 p.m. they were doing this, and by 8 p.m. they were doing that. Like, it's that kind of detail. So, yeah, anyway. So I'll leave it for there, and I'll pick up with you tomorrow, because I want to do more. Okay, see you then. Good morning, book club. It's Saturday morning. It's super early, which is why you're getting messy bun Lisa and fresh face Lisa, because I just thought I'd do a little reading this morning. First off, so last night I got pretty tired reading last night, and I found myself getting a little frustrated, and I don't know if that came across on camera or not. I was getting a little frustrated because I just wasn't sure what was going on in some of the battles, and I've made peace with the fact that there's going to be a lot of that in this book. So as much as I am reading this because I want to learn about who Napoleon was as a man, in order to understand who he was as a man, I'm going to have to read all about his battles. So I did actually take some time last night after I put the book away, just went on the internet, like on my iPad, and went on YouTube, and just started like giving myself some better context for the French Revolution. Like, it's been a hot minute, like decades since I was in high school, and we had to learn, you know, probably just even snippets of about the French Revolution, and really how I was saying before, how it impacted Canada, or leading up to the events that impacted Canada. But so I didn't really have any context. Like, I was getting kind of lost in the minutiae about, you know, why were they in these specific regions of Italy, and what was going on in the rest of Europe that he was sent there, and I didn't understand the context, so I was getting a little lost. So I actually spent a little bit of time, just, you know, an hour or so, just reading some articles on the internet, watching some YouTube, like I said, just to understand what was going on in Europe at the time with the French Revolution, and how it impacted the surrounding countries around it that were monarchies, and what kind of led to those resistance to to change. Like, other European countries were watching France, you know, behead its king and overthrow and bring in liberal ideas and equality and religious freedom and things like that, and other countries weren't quite happy about that. So a lot of it had to do with that, and I'm talking high level. Like, that's one thing I do when I read books like this, is if you start getting a little bit lost, like I was, just zoom out. Like, so what I do is just zoom way out, like 10,000 foot level, and just big picture what was going on, and just to have a little bit better context so that I can understand why he was doing these military campaigns, and so then therefore I would care, because I don't want to just suffer through the majority of this book reading about the details of battles that were going on, you know, hundreds of years ago. So I did that, and I'm really glad I did, because now I feel refreshed and ready to tackle more of this book today. So I want to get through the rest of this chapter this morning. Like I was saying last night, it is dense, and it is taking me a while to get through the chapters now, chapter 4 and chapter 5 specifically, and again because we were talking about battles that I didn't know anything about. So yeah, and I just wanted to say that about this book. It is very good, but I think the author, when I think he is making maybe some assumption about the reader's level of context, or the amount of context that you would bring into this story in order to get the most out of it. Obviously, if you're going to sit down and read a almost 900-page book on Napoleon, you probably, maybe he was assuming, rightly or wrongly, that you knew more context about Europe at the time and what led to these events. So, and because he doesn't spend a lot of time, if, you know, maybe I just missed it, kind of talking about all that. So, and he did a little bit. There was I do recall there, you know, being some talk, discussion earlier in the novel, but it just, for somebody coming in, like, especially I'm not European, so somebody coming in without all that context, I did find I was getting a little bit lost. So yeah, I just zoomed out, found some information, got myself reoriented, have kind of a bigger picture understanding of what's going on. So I think that'll help increase my, you know, how I get on with this book. And like I said, I'm not writing a quiz at the end. There's no paper I'm handing in. I'm not doing this for any academic study. I just really want to learn about Napoleon because I really like him as a historical figure. And so that's it. So if the things I found aren't totally accurate or, you know, academically reviewed, that's fine. It's fine. I'm just reading this for fun. And so I just wanted to say that. Okay, so we'll check in with you throughout the day. Hey everyone, quick update here. So I just finished chapter 6 of my book. I'm now on page 161. So chapter 6 was not as grueling to get through. It was really a transition chapter between finishing up his battles in Italy and coming back to Paris. And basically he's a celebrated hero. And he rises in popularity through the French public, and he really knows how to use that to his advantage. So yeah, anyway, so now he's getting sent to Egypt. So that's going to be the next kind of major section. And it was one of his next major events that he was involved with. And he was sent there to help disrupt the trade routes between the East and Great Britain, because France knew that they would never be able to beat Britain, the British Navy. They'd never be able to conquer England. So, because they debated about doing that, like invading England, and decided the better strategy was to disrupt the trade routes. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, this is a bit of a dense read, but I'm doing good. Like I'm here in the book. So I'd say not quite over a quarter of the way through or so. So I'm just gonna take some time and flick through some of the pictures that are were kind of placed in the middle of chapter 6. I've looked at most of them already, but I'm just gonna kind of go through them and refresh. And then I think I'm gonna take a bit of a break, have some lunch. It's really raining and gross in Vancouver today, so I'm happy to just be inside reading. Hey, just a little update. I'm still going through it. I thought I was gonna stop and maybe read something a little lighter, but it's so good. It's so good. I'm really enjoying this. I am now moving on to chapter 8. So I'm on a page 185. So I'm almost done part 1 of the book. So I've only got chapter 8 and chapter 9, and that'll take me to part 2. The book's divided into 3 main sections. So that means I will have finished all the red tabs. So I'm enjoying it. And I just got to do another character study. So this kind of stuff, do this kind of stuff, you guys. If you're reading, especially if you're reading something like this, where there's a lot of dudes, or maybe you want to do something like a character study or an event study or a battle study or whatever you're reading. I like doing character studies on major women characters. And I say characters, and those could be actual characters in a novel or like real people. I like doing character studies on the women I come across when I'm reading books like this, because I just find it just keeps me a little bit more engaged. And like I showed you, hopefully I was able to put some footage together showing you of how I actually do this. Glue them in your book. Like, just have fun with your book. Write in it. Put notes in it. Add sticky notes. Underline things. And so doing these little character studies really helps like it keeps me in the story and it keeps me in the text, but I get to go down on just a little, you know, just a short rabbit hole about some of the more major female characters that, you know, were a part of Napoleon's life. So I did a character study for his first fiancée and Desiree, and then I did a character study for Josephine, right, his wife. There's Josephine's character study, and so I just did a character study on Pauline, who was AKA his Cleopatra. He had a torrid love affair with her while he was in Egypt. And what a story. The author does actually give a few paragraphs describing how he met her and the circumstances of their affair, because it's truly a fascinating and interesting story. So I did go online and found a little bit more information about her. I just read her birth date, when she died. She lived to be a 91-year-old woman. She went on to like make a fortune in South America, and she was an artist and a painter, and she was kind of the talk of the town for her eccentric behavior. She used to take her dog to church with her, and you know, she just lived this amazing life. She was a feminist of her day, like she lived from 1778 to 1869, and I just loved that about her. You know, she was very interesting, and not a whole bunch about her I could find, but that's okay, you know. So it's just kind of neat to find some interesting stuff to keep you in the story. But anyway, going back to Napoleon, I still have a crush on him too. He's great. So we're deep into his campaign in Egypt. You know, they've kind of they're colonizing. I'm just gonna say it, they're colonizing, and it's, you know, it's not great, but it's still a fascinating part of history. And he's about to move into Israel for the next kind of phase of that expedition that he was on, if that's what you want to call it. And I think he's gonna get his ass kicked by the Turks. So I don't know what's gonna happen after that, but yeah, so that's where things are at. It's very interesting, you know, despite his, you know, love affair there. But and to his point, like this book, and from what I've seen reading about him online, he did remain faithful to Josephine, even though she did not return that. And then when he found out about it, he was in Egypt when somebody gave him actual evidence in her own writing. There was a lot of letter writing going on about her infidelity. And so after that, he was just like, well, as soon as I get back to Paris, what's waiting for me but a divorce? So he met this pretty young woman who was also married. Yeah, and he, you know, after he left Egypt, he couldn't take her with him, so he kind of like passed her on to another one of his generals, and she was okay with that. She was just happy to be his mistress and, you know, live this gilded life with him in Egypt. So it was quite interesting. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna quit gushing about this book because I'm going to continue on and read chapter 8 and read chapter 9 and then finish part 1 of this book. Part 1 is called Rise. So that's the update so far. See you in a little. Good morning. So I just got back from a short run. I've been nursing a bit of a calf injury, so I've been a little bit sidelined, but it's getting better. So I just went for a really short, like 2K jog. And then when I was out, my calf was good, so I feel good about that, but I was thinking about Napoleon. So I'm in chapter 9 where I left off last. I've only got about, I don't know, 10 or 12 pages left, and that'll put me into part 2 of the book. So I think what I'm gonna do is go have a quick shower, clean up, make myself some tea, turn the computer on, and then finish reading part 1. So, and then I think I'll just wrap this vlog up. I'll give you my thoughts about part 1 of the book, and edit this video and call it my weekend vlog. And so we'll leave it there, and so I'll see you in a little bit. So I finished part 1 of Napoleon the Great. So that was the first 9 chapters, which pushed me about 1/3 of the way through this book. I'm really enjoying it. It's very fascinating. You know, he's a historical character that I'm really enjoying learning about, and yeah, so I'll continue plucking my way along through this. I'm on no specific timeline to finish this. Like, you know, I am making pretty good pace at this point. I've only been reading this book for less than a week, like 5 days or so. So, you know, if I continue at this pace, I'll probably finish it fairly shortly, but I don't know, like I'm a mood reader and I might need to take a bit of a break from it. I have been leaving myself lots of breadcrumbs and notes for how to pick up and continue on if I do put it down for a little bit, but I do want to get through it. I think it's only going to get more and more interesting as I go along. I got some other stuff to go get done today. My son wants to go to the gym with me, so we're going to go do that. And there isn't a stick of food in my fridge, so I gotta go get some groceries. You know, life. And I'm gonna put this video together and do some editing, and hopefully I'll figure out how to do some voiceovers and some speed ups and stuff like that, so it's not too long. And that's it. So if you hung out with me today to watch this vlog, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for hanging in and all your kind comments and thumbs ups. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay? Have a great one. Talk to you later. Okay.